living la vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs, time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage, we're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal, yeah, you're getting closer. Motivated and focused, don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com. Woo.
Well, thank you guys for being here, and let's just have fun today. This is Jackie Fletcher and Louise Reynolds. They are the masterminds behind this wonderful podcast that they gave me the great privilege of being a guest on recently, called Fabulously Keto. I love anything that kind of brings a smile to your face, and when I say your podcast name, like Living La Vida Low Carb is kind of fun, but Fabulously Keto just has a nice little ring to it. So welcome to the show, you guys.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Jimmy. It's a real pleasure.
Yes. So guys, go check them out. Fabulouslyketo.com is the website. And I know, Jackie, you're over on Instagram, Fabulously Keto, and the number 1 is the username there. So go check it out, you guys. But why don't we hear both of your stories? Because maybe people don't know who you are. You're a relatively new podcast. How many episodes now?
40 is just released now, today.
40. Okay. So not real new, but compared to like 1,700 something that I have, it's a little more new. But tell us your stories about how you got interested in keto. So Jackie, why don't you start? And then Louise, you can just pick up when she's done.
Okay, so I always say that I was destined to be overweight. My dad's family were all overweight. In fact, my granddad was nicknamed Cannon, just to give you, for those who were around in the 70s, to give you an idea of his size.
Yeah.
And so I always thought I was going to be overweight anyway. I guess I grew up with that around me. And by the time I was in my early teens, I was already doing Weight Watchers and anything else that came along, Cambridge diet, all different things. And I was never very good at sticking to it. I also had some health issues, which looking back now, I can see is probably related to lots of carbs that I was eating at the time. And it wasn't particularly junk food. It was more lots of food, lots of potatoes, lots of biscuits and cakes, I guess. But, you know, we didn't have McDonald's until I was in my mid-teens. So, you know, it's not the normal junk food that people are having today. So by the time I was 17, I had a benign tumour. We didn't know it was benign at the time, but it was the size of a football on my ovaries. So I had 1.5 ovaries removed, and then after that my weight ballooned even more, which now I understand is due to interfering with all the ovaries and the hormones and everything else. So when I was 19, I was 90 kilos, which is probably, what was it? I don't know what that was.
About 200 pounds.
Yeah, probably around that. But my weight would fluctuate, and I would go down from around 175 to 200 pounds throughout my the following years going on. When I was in my late 20s, I started to get migraines really, really badly. It would knock me out for 3 days. And at the time, they just brought in Sumitrapan, Imigran. So I was one of the first people on it, and that really helped. But by the time I was in my 40s, I was taking 9 or 10 pills a month. And so I would get lots of migraines. And I was always searching for something to do. But by that point, I'd sort of given up on losing weight. Weight didn't seem to be, diets don't work. I'd come to the conclusion that diets don't work.
I want to circle back to that in a minute when we get done hearing both of your stories, because I think that's a fascinating point. Keep going.
Okay. So I'd given up, and with time, stress, work, I was putting on more and more weight. So by 2017, I weighed in at about 231 pounds, which in English money is 16 and a half stone, or about 110 kilos.
Yeah.
And I wasn't planning on doing anything because I can't stick on a diet. You know, I know myself, 3 weeks is about maximum I'll do. Then what? I'll put it all back on again, and I'll be even more than I was before. Why bother? I'm no good at it. I can't do it. I'm not a healthy eater. All these things that were going through my mind. And so I wasn't really motivated, but I listened to initially a podcast that recommended a book, which was Gretchen Rubin's Better Than Before.
Yes.
Mastering the Habits of Everyday Lives. And I listened to that, and in that she spoke about Gary Taubes's book. So I picked up Gary Taubes's book and read it through. I listened to it.
Was it Why We Get Fat, the book?
Yeah. Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It. I was on Audible. I listened to it twice. I just started cutting out potatoes, pasta, rice, biscuits, cakes, so wheat. I knew wheat was addictive. I'd read Wheat Belly in the past.
Yeah.
So I cut all those things out, but I wasn't particularly doing anything in particular. I just cut those things out. I was still eating chocolate. I don't eat lots of chocolate, but I would have some squares after my dinner. And then the weight started to come off. And then about 6 months later, I read your book, Keto Clarity. And from there, I really started to hone in on keto. So that was in January 2018.
That's cool.
And the rest is just history, I guess.
The rest, they say, is history. Well, that's you brought up a lot of points. I wrote down a couple of little notes I want to dig in with both of you here in a minute. But Louise, tell us your story.
Well, unlike Jackie, I wasn't, I got fat in my late 20s, early 30s, and really mine is a story of about emotional eating. So as the good Dr. Phil said, I was having a party in my mouth, and this was really about me being unhappy for a whole bunch of reasons, and mainly it was because I was in an unhappy marriage, and I really consoled my food, became an escape, and I was just basically eating my emotions. And at that time, there was a whole bunch of stress. So stress was very much attributed to that. I was a working mom. I was doing my dissertation, career changes, unhappy marriage, and obviously, just eating loads and loads of the wrong things. My marriage ended in 2003, but my weight still crept up. So I, like Jackie, I did Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig. I had a personal trainer. I tried to eat less, move more, and that clearly didn't work for me. So at my heaviest, so I've got three different metric imperial systems. At my heaviest in 2012, I was 134 kilos, 295 pounds, and 21 stone.
Wow.
I was obviously morbidly obese. And in 2012, I ended up having weight loss surgery. I'd made the decision. I was a college professor at that time. I was standing up in front of these large freshman classes talking about the healthcare system. And this is me being the epitome or antithesis of not being healthy.
That's right.
I was an intelligent woman, but I couldn't eat less and move more. Why wasn't that working? I needed an intervention, and I chose weight loss surgery on the basis of a friend who recommended it, who had great results, great surgeon, and it worked. I lost I got down to about 90 kilos, about 140, not quite 140 pounds or something. Not quite 140 pounds. I got down to, I'd lost a bunch of weight. And that was 2015.
Over triple digit in pounds less, yes.
Yes. So this was 2015, and I ended up having quite a serious motorcycle accident. And that led me to having, I was in ICU for 5 days. I was in a coma, the induced coma. multiple broken bones, 5 hours of spinal surgery. Anyway, lucky to walk again. And it was my mom who said, given that you've got chronic pain, maybe you need to look at managing your inflammation, wink, wink. And so she led me to changing the way that I was eating. Little did I know at that time, she was already low carb. She had already found Tim Noakes's Real Meal Revolution. She was already had changed to lowering her carbohydrates, losing weight, healthy fats, the whole kit and caboodle. And it was like, okay, I'll give this a go. I'm obviously going to be living with this chronic pain condition for the rest of my life. I'll give it a go. And I still had, I'd still had a little bit of, perhaps those few vanity pounds to go. But like most people that find low carb keto, they come for the weight loss, but stay for the health benefits. And I'm, here I am. So that was 2000 in our summer, Australian summer of 2015. So now 6 years later, I have lost a total of 60 kilos, 132 pounds, 9 stone. So I have embraced low carb keto for really managing my chronic pain condition from particularly from my accident. But the additional weight loss that I had gained after the weight loss surgery really has made it sustainable for me, and being a real advocate for obviously the two interventions, weight loss surgery and low carb keto, and not to be stigmatized for using the weight loss surgery because I had such a big chunk of weight to lose. Man, and nothing was working for me.
Oh, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, it was I don't see that they're mutually exclusive. I think the two together are a fantastic tool for me.
That's where I was going with that, is a lot of people shame people that get weight loss surgery, and I think that's stupid. Like, we all have our journey, and sometimes it's a tool that then is followed up by kind of a higher protein keto, because you want to make sure you're protein sufficient since your stomach's that big now. My mom had weight loss surgery about the same time that I went low carb Atkins back in the day. And so you can actually stretch that out and get obese again, which is what happened to her. Even though I keep talking to her about keto, she'll do it for a couple months and then she just reverts back. She's just like, I can't stick to it. Like, your son is one of the known people in keto. If I can't help you, Mom, there ain't nobody going to be able to help you. But wow, both of your stories are just so phenomenal. How did you two meet each other and then decide you want to do a podcast together? Jackie?
Okay. So we both were listening to I'll start again. We're both listening to the Keto Woman podcast, and we both belonged to Daisy Brackenhall's group, which is, I can never get it around the right way, but kick-ass keto bitches.
I love Daisy's work.
Yeah. And I'd heard Louise on several of Daisy's podcasts, and because I was listening to the back catalogue and heard that Louise was working about 20 minutes up the road from me in the university in Chelmsford. So I sent her a message on Facebook, and it was in January 2019, and said, I live just down the road from you, would you like to meet for a coffee? And she said, I'm in Australia at the moment, but when I get back to the UK, then yes. So we met up the end of January. From then we would have quite a few coffees over the months. And when Louise left the UK in October 2019, we just carried on the friendship. And I'd already planned on doing the podcast, and Louise was kept pushing me to do it, because back in early 2019 I said I'm going to do a podcast, but I didn't actually do it. But at this point I'd already started doing some of the recordings, and then I said to her, would you like to, because she was helping me so much in the background, I said, would you like to come and co-host with me? totally expecting her to say no, but as you can see, she said yes.
Come on. Why would you expect her to say no? Of course she wants that.
Because she's really busy. She has lots of, she's teaching and she does lots of other things. So
that's a high honor that Louise gave you, saying, yes, I'm busy, but I value this so much. I want to put in the time. So that's beautiful. And so you made this connection. Who came up with Fabulously Keto? Was that your idea, Jackie? Or
yeah, because I just love keto, love being keto. I feel so fantastic. I feel better in my 50s than I did in my 20s, even in my teens. I would say my teens were a bad time because I was in a lot of pain and a lot of stuff going on that I didn't even know was going on. So I feel better now than I ever did. So I think it's fabulous.
That's cool. So I want to talk about, because we're in 3 different countries right now. I'm in the US. Jackie, you're in the UK, and Louise, you're from Australia, but in Thailand right now. I want to get a feel, and I'll give you my thoughts about America here in a minute. But Louise, let's start with you. What's it like in Thailand to be keto? Is it hard? Are there challenges? Are there things that are advantages? And even Australia as well.
Oh my gosh, Jimmy, I'm in the land of rice and noodle. Like, this is like a double whammy of, you come to a country, but mind you, I mean, the protein is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. To be fair, you've got the choice of some wonderful, rich protein sources, pork, chicken, duck, seafood, even insects. So in some of the provinces, there's obviously a whole range of the cricket sources for protein. Yeah. So whole bunch of keto. So my keto is, in terms of living, in the UK to Australia and now Asia, is very different. So here, there actually is keto cafes and restaurants. I've had to really search for the keto supermarkets. So there is a little bit of a keto movement that I'm sort of trying to tap into. But it certainly is a challenge because, one, the food is so cheap. It is so delicious, but it's cooked in those crappy seed oils and it's full of sugar. Wow. So when I go to restaurants, I have to, just sort of sacrifice the seed oils, for the stir fries and leave off the rice or the noodle out of my soups. So that's okay. But Australia is fantastic. I mean, you've been many times to Australia. I've been privileged to meet you in Adelaide when you've been on tour. Australia has, it's great. And it's been fantastic with, the beef, the lamb, and there's some great Australians, as you know, with Marty Kendall and, Ken Sakaris and all those sort of great Aussies, championing Gary Fettke and,
Dr.
Absolutely.
Set up low-carb down under. And, the thing I remember the most about Australia was there wasn't seeking out grass-fed. It was kind of the default. Everybody had grass-fed. I was like, bring that to America because it's so hard to find it unless you go to a farm or a farmer's market around here. And then the other thing that caught my attention about Australia is avocados coming out your ears because they grow there, whereas they grow in California and Mexico in America. That's it. Like, they don't really grow ubiquitously like they do all across Australia.
Keto Chow is a customizable shake mix that is also perfect for cooking and baking, giving you simple, nutritionally perfect meal options. Keto Chow. Make keto easy. Discover your favorite flavor at jimmylovesketochow.com.
The thing that I miss the most is beef, lamb, macadamias in big bags.
Yes. Oh my God. I could have brought a crap load of macadamia nuts and macadamia nut oil if I could have fit it in my carry-on or fit it in my bag on the way home because it was so dirt cheap compared to how we get it here in the States.
And then obviously living in the UK where I was living and working for a time, I miss clotted cream and pork scratchings. They're my 2 favourite UK foods.
Speaking of clotted cream, and I'll get to you in a minute, Jackie, but double cream, oh my gosh. Like, I had people in Australia, I think in Adelaide actually, when I went to speak to Dr. Brett Hill's patients, I had people bring me double cream and grass-fed butter. They're like, you always talk about that stuff on your podcast. So here, it's like, I can't take this with me on the plane. So, in fact, I tried to, my last trip to Australia, somebody gave me butter the last night I was there. And I tried putting it in my carry-on, and they actually confiscated it. They're like, you can't take that back to the States with you. And I'm like, it's just butter. And I'm going to eat it on the plane, not the whole thing, but have it with my meals on the plane. Nope, you can't have it. Oh, it made me feel like a criminal just for having butter. But I guess there's some food safety or something there that they're trying to. But Jackie, you are in the UK, been there your whole life. What's the food kind of like there? I mean, I've been to the UK as well one time, and it seemed pretty good. And yes, the clotted cream, the double cream, all those things is pretty amazing, things we don't have here in the States. Talk about, like, is keto a thing there?
I think when I started, it wasn't particularly well known. But over time, it's become more and more well known. So we now have a low carb supermarket. We've got there are keto restaurants. There are people making things and selling them, sending them out by post. So we've interviewed on our podcast from Scoundrel, make chocolate and ice cream, and Deliciously Guilt-Free make brownies, and we have No FOMO Foods creating cakes. There's a lot more going on now, and a lot more things that people are selling.
That is a hilarious name, No FOMO Foods, fear of missing out, for those of you that don't know the vernacular. So keep going.
Yeah, so there's a lot more going on. My husband does most of our cooking, and he does all the shopping. So I just ask for things, and he sometimes comes back with them. So whereas before I used to go to the health food shop to get my erythritol, now they sell it in the local Tesco's. So something. Also, there's a make of almond butter and peanut butter, and I think cashew butter. I think they do, which is just 100% nuts. You can now get those in the supermarkets, whereas before I was going to the health food shop. So I think it's becoming more and more, there's a greater awareness about it now.
Look, I think once they could make money from it, that's when things start to take off. But they need to see it kind of proof of concept. And then as far as like leaders in your country, you got people like Dr. Aseem Malhotra, very vocal in your country. Zoe Harcum is very vocal. Sam Feltham is leading this group that's kind of bringing people together around low-carb diets and the science community. I know I'm insulting Malcolm Kendrick. I'm insulting a lot of people. I'm not naming anybody else prominent I'm missing.
David Unwin and Jen Unwin.
Yes, David and Jen, yes. So, so there's so many wonderful people. Australia, as well as the UK. And here in the States, we have, obviously, all the known names here. But it's not as good, I think, as far as like the foods, like you guys are talking about availability. It's not as good here because what's happened in America always happens with every diet trend. They'll slap keto on it just because it's the big buzzword, but it's full of crap. Like I go to my local grocery store about a mile from here, and I'll go in and I'll see something keto. I'll flip it on the back and I see whole wheat is the first ingredient. I go, how is that keto? And of course, they manipulate the fiber content. Net carb says this, but it's 27 grams of carbohydrate. And it's the most inflammatory kinds of carbohydrate between grains and sugars and then seed oils that they put in it. It's just, I think keto is known, but people don't know the distinction between the term on a food and they just believe it and what's legitimately keto. And so it's a little more challenging here. I guess I call that job security, being in the keto space, educating people that when people get frustrated, they come and they hear my podcast and try to learn. But yeah, it's kind of cool to hear how this is going around the world. I hear from people around the world all the time. Keto's getting big here. I know New Zealand, I hear a lot of people talking about it's kind of exploding there in New Zealand now. Different pockets of the world, even in Asia where you are right now, Louise, a lot of people are saying it's not big, but you see pockets of it. So it's cool.
And I think in the world we move in, we think it's bigger because everybody is talking about keto, right, and the groups we're in and they're the people we're talking to.
Right.
But probably it's not that big, maybe.
Trust me, I keep my ear to the ground of real people, and it's like we're probably 15-ish% of the population, and you still have 85%, to use a Christian vernacular, that aren't saved yet. We got to save them from the perils of conventional wisdom about diet. Louise, did you have something?
Yeah, which is really interesting because I'm trying to tap into obviously the Asia Pacific sort of region as well. And I've joined a few groups that are based in like Singapore and Malaysia, where there's a huge, in terms of the burden of disease with diabetes. So, and it's been really interesting to tap into these groups to sort of see, well, what type of food they're eating, how they're getting access to healthcare, what their doctors are saying, and particularly because obviously we're dealing with different cultural ethnicities, how their families are reacting. And family is such a big part of their food cultures and eating out. And to see how they go, particularly in the market, because that's where we eat a lot of the time, is in these open markets, and what type of food they're doing. So I'm trying to sort of tap into that sort of, local wisdom to sort of see how I can get around and, what are the types of things people are eating, and adapting recipes as well. So that's a big thing because I'm a little bit of a bit of a foodie, because that's how Jackie and I also met through obviously the two keto dudes as well. So with the Keto Woman podcast, I love to cook, with Carl and Richard, because we also met at Keto Fest, and cooking is a big thing for me, and being able to do that here and to adapt the local flavors, because the food is so fresh, the greens and the flavors, the chilies and limes and gingers. So, and wanting to make keto Asian food as well. So
the cool thing about Keto Fest that they did on that Saturday, at least the year that I went, was they did this, you just go around to all these different cooking demos and you could taste all the food and watch demonstrations. That was very creative. I've never seen another conference anywhere in the world do that. So that was cool. Well, I want to get into some of the things you guys brought up in your start. So Louise, you said something about stress of a bad relationship made it very difficult. And I want to kind of tease into this for a bit, because I feel like this is an undervalued reason why people keep weight on their body despite their best efforts, Jackie, and they try and they try and they try, and they keep going, well, it's just not working. And then you even mentioned, Jackie, in your comment of, well, I just at some point just gave up on the weight because I felt it was a helpless cause. And I think that's more normal than we want to let on, that when you do the right things for so long and yet you see no results from that, it does kind of have this mentality of, well, it doesn't matter. Why should I care about it anymore? Which in some ways is good because it lets you focus on what's important, the health. But in some ways, okay, but do you want to address it at some point? So it's kind of this tit for tat. So let's start with you, Jackie. What do you think about stress from bad relationships, bad circumstances in life, even unresolved traumas, and this frustration that you get as you get older?
I think stress is massive. We know that stress releases cortisol, and that in turn raises insulin. So then we're fighting a losing battle with that. I think stress is all pervasive, and I think we've had lots of, I actually don't feel stressed from the last year and a half of being locked down, but there are lots of people that have, this has impacted massively.
Yes.
And I think we don't realize the impact that it's having on us. And I, at the time in 2017, was going through a really stressful time because I was running a business. We were a minicab firm. We were being massively impacted by Uber, who'd been in London for a couple of years. Things were getting really tough. I was working all hours of the day and night. And when I say night, I mean all night. So I sometimes did 24 hours being awake.
Wow.
Sometimes I was working a night shift, which was 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning. you don't realize how that impacts your body. I mean, now we know because we've learnt it, but at the time I would had no idea what was happening. And so there's no surprise that the weight was piling on in that last year before I decided to make a change. And you know, when I decided to make the change, I hadn't really decided. I just thought, oh well, I'll give it a go, not expecting it to work. So the fact that 4 years down the line I still weigh less than I did in my 30s is massive.
Well, and not just way less, kind of like you gave up on the weight, but you embraced the health. You didn't give up on trying to be healthy. You just gave up on this esoteric goal of I want to lose weight. And Louise, that's so common, I think, where some of us that have done this for a long time, you get to the mental state where you go, okay, what's important here? What is most important? Being healthy or trying to look like I really hate this. I was contacted recently to be a part of a summit called the Look Good Naked Summit. And I had to politely decline because I'm like, that doesn't align with my values. I look good naked to Jimmy. That's all that matters. But I don't think the rest of the world needs to know what I look like naked and look good naked. That's not my goal. Feel good regardless. If that was the name of your conference, I would be totally a part of that.
I was going to say, I look good with the lights off, so that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. Like, yeah, I am. What resonates with me was our good friend Daisy Brackenhall, who said that she was hiding behind this big wall of fat. So this big wall of fat was protecting, obviously, everything that was underneath. And I think that really, when she said that to me, you know, that so resonated with me because you know, I had this traumatic experience where I was completely and absolutely rejected, you know, because I didn't look good naked to the person that I thought was going to be, you know, the one. And, you know, but that's obviously part of it was obviously emotional immaturity, and obviously there were other issues that that came into the relationship. So in terms of breaking it down. Yeah. So I hid behind this big wall of fat, you know, from this emotional sort of trauma, rejection, and that's how I dealt with it through food. And food was the escape. Food, obviously, as we now know, you know, through having, you know, interviewed like Jen Unwin with food addictions and how addictive these foods are. And I was in this dopamine cycle, and, you know, Dr. Phil said, you know, yeah, I was having this party in my mouth, and because the food chemical brain relationship, that I was increasingly becoming addicted. I was also single parenting my son who had special needs, and as part of that stress, part of doing my dissertation, I was a single mom working full time, you know, and studying. So I had things that I could control and things that obviously I couldn't control. And underlying all of that was all this food, my relationship with food as an escape from the trauma. And increasingly the big wall of fat, as Daisy would say, was protecting this hurt, you know, this hurt person. So once I dealt with the trauma, I did see a therapist, and that therapist was a specialist in food, like eating disorders. Not to say I was diagnosed with a eating disorder, but I certainly had disorderly relationship eating with food. Yes. And did all that in therapy, and I did 3 years leading up to the decision to make for the weight loss surgery, and then I had another 2 years post-operatively. So I put a lot of years of therapy into making sure now I'm good. I mean, don't get me wrong. Being in a foreign country, which I don't speak the language, and in a pandemic, you know, is pretty stressful, but I've got the tools. You know, I've got the emotional intelligence to know, hey, I'm not feeling so good right now, and I need to do some self-soothing in a positive thing with a positive relationship with food. I'm going to go and, because we've still got restrictions here, I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to go watch some mindless Netflix and I'm just going to chill, and do that. That's, to me, that's, I don't need to hide behind that big wall of fat. I just need to find and have that healthy relationship with food now.
Love it. Since you mentioned Dr. Phil twice now, I have to do my Dr. Phil line for you. Today can be a changing day in your life. Sorry.
Thank you. I used to like him. I mean, he was a no-nonsense guy, not all of the time, but that party in your mouth sort of so resonated with me, and it's just like, maybe I just needed a straight talking Texan doctor, to tell me to snap out of it, Louise, and stop putting that rubbish in your food.
That southern accent that he talked like this, and you just couldn't deny when he would talk to you. See, I can do it as an American. I can make fun of an American accent. Well, let's shift over to something you said, Jackie. You talked about giving up on the weight. One of the other things was how we play mind games with ourselves. And sometimes we get in our own heads, and I've been doing a lot of like my own self-reflection the last couple of years. Like you were talking about, Louise, you've been on this journey. I have too. And the mind games, Jackie, that's the hard one. How do you stop talking to yourself? And we all do it. Let's just admit it. It's just a part of the process. But sometimes we're our own worst enemy when we should be our best advocate.
Yeah, definitely. Because we can talk ourselves into and out of anything in a way.
Yeah.
And so I had years and years of telling myself that I can't do diets. I can't stick to them. I can't do any more than 3 weeks. I'm going to do it for 3 weeks and then I'm going to give up. So why bother? It got to that point for many years, many years, even before that. Why was I going to bother? I'm not going to bother. And I forgot where I was going with this. We just choose what we want to tell ourselves, and then there comes. So going back, in 2016, I had done. I'd read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Body.
Yeah.
And so I started cutting out some of the carbs, and I was having eggs for breakfast, and I was doing some of the stuff that he said. And I did it for 3 weeks, and I met this doctor and I told him what I was doing, and he looked horrified, and he said, you need to eat carbs. Well, that's all I needed, because I was depriving myself of not eating wheat and not eating potatoes. So I love potatoes. So what excuse I could tell myself, oh, look, this doctor said I can go back to eating carbs. Great. Sandwiches for lunch every day, potatoes with my dinner every evening. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted somebody to tell me, because that's what I wanted to hear.
You got permission from an authoritative figure that made it seem like it was okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I don't rely on that. Now I rely on, I think enough time has gone by for me to see how I feel.
Right.
The differences in my body. I have no idea where I was metabolically beforehand, because I would never go to the doctor, because I didn't really it wasn't my doctor that said this. It was another doctor who I sort of thought, well, he must know. But I never went to doctor. In fact, when the doctor said they ticked the cholesterol, I said, why are you ticking cholesterol? I don't want to know my cholesterol, because that would mean changing my diet, and I'm not going to do that. So I have no idea where I was metabolically, but probably on the way to, if not pre-diabetic, on the way to being pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
And so now I know what my health markers are. Now I will go to the doctor and ask for those tests to be done quite regularly, because that now is important to me, and I feel I can do something about it. It is within my remit to do something about it, and I can do it. So I'm happy to know those figures now.
Well, and now you know too that doctors don't really know a lot about nutrition. So any input they give you about nutrition, they're out of their league. They don't really know. And so it's sad. And especially here in America, I mean, there's so many white coat syndrome. Yes, doctor, I'll do whatever you say, doctor people. I'm hoping, I mean, I'm a little bit older, but the generation behind me and younger are kind of going to go, we're going to question Louise. We're just not going to buy what you sell us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just picking up on Jackie's point about the stories, and I think certainly from what I understand about, like on your journey, Jimmy, where we are reflecting a lot on what those things that we have been telling ourselves, and those stories are there to protect us.
Yeah.
And part of what Jackie was saying was something that I know resonates with you, is about those self-limiting beliefs. And those self-limiting beliefs can also feed into this negative story, and we get into that negative sentiment override, that I can't do this, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to go on a diet because I'm not going to lose weight, this is the thing, I'm not going to ever progress because of those self-limiting beliefs. And it's a negative cycle that we get into, but it's the stories that are there to protect us because we've been hurt, we've had this trauma, that this is the journey that we need to then almost lift ourselves up and go, okay, I'm going to have to take a risk. I'm going to have to make myself vulnerable, and I'm just going to have to take a chance. It may or may not work, but I just need to give it a go because, like Jackie said, my health is at stake here. I'm pre-diabetic. I was a morbidly obese woman. This is not good. I was metabolically healthy, but I certainly was. The knees were sore and all those sorts of things. So there's a whole bunch of this psychology stuff that, once we know how tricky our brains are at keeping us, and it's doing its job to protect us, but it's not necessarily serving our best interests in a way.
Man, I think we sabotage ourselves on so many parts of life because we think negative thoughts, which is why I'm always trying to get people to reframe negative thoughts into, okay, there's something good about whatever it is you're thinking about. There's something good there. So Jackie, when you gave up on weight and you had that thought, it was just like, okay, I could just dwell on, well, since I can't lose weight, therefore I do nothing. You didn't do that. You reframed it. And you say, well, the weight's not participating, but I can lower blood sugar. I can lower inflammation levels. I can get healthier. And then through that, some magical things happened about the thing you were worried about. And so I think ultimately we can, like you said, choose, Jackie, between whether we want to express that mindfulness in a negative way or the mindfulness in a positive way. Ultimately, you decide which way it goes.
Yeah. And if people look at me, they would say I'm overweight. I'm still overweight. I still have a good 20 to 30 pounds to lose, reduce.
But do you feel good? Are you energetic? Do you have a sharp mind? Like, those are the things, because I get a lot of flack for still having weight on my body. And I'm like, I don't care anymore. I feel good. I don't make myself feel bad because of other people's expectations of what they think I should be.
Exactly.
I think where people get it so wrong. You got me on my soapbox now, guys.
But I think people don't realize where you've come from. If they look at Louise, for example, they would never imagine that she used to weigh 300 pounds. And even mine, that is not such a huge loss. It's maybe 55 pounds. That's still big in terms of most people, because most people can lose that weight, but can they sustain it? Now, this has been sustained for 4 years now. So, yes, it is sustainable. So people don't know where you've come from. But even being still overweight, and I would say I'm probably one of the healthy, and I've heard you say this before, Jimmy, as well, I'm probably one of the healthiest people I know, because I know that metabolically I'm very healthy.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie. Well, let's get into something, Louise, that you talked about as well. You had two other thoughts I wrote down. You were intelligent, but you still struggled. And I get this a lot. People are like, well, if you're so smart, why did you get fat? How did you stay fat? And I think it's such a weird dynamic that you could be successful in your career. You could be successful in various parts of your life. But this one part of your life, somehow you blew it.
And this was the thing. And, you know, as you do, like you've stood up at conferences, you're looking out in the room, and you know you've got these faces looking at you. I mean, I was the sage on the stage, you know, this oracle of wisdom and light, particularly to freshmen, you know, that sort of stuff. So you're impressionable you're shaping impressionable young minds. And you know, it was hard because I was talking about, you know, these are the future health professionals. We had, you know, doctors, paramedics, nurses, teachers, you know, they were in this health class. And here I was espousing, you know, what is health? And we're talking about health beliefs and health values. But looking at me behind this big wall of fat was obviously someone that was, you know, by definition not healthy, because obviously the students were taking, you know, like this health systems 101 class. And, you know, by what health means was not typical. So I actually had this freshman student say to me, well, how come you're so fat? So basically as blunt as that, because that's what Australians do, you know, they call a spade a spade. And it's like, you know, you're talking up there, Dr. Lou, you're saying, you know, this is health, but you're clearly not healthy. And it's like, yeah, and it's almost like, sorry for swearing, like, no shit, Sherlock, you know, I know that. And it's not for the want of trying, like Jackie. It wasn't for the want of trying. I was doing the Jenny Craigs, the Weight Watchers and that sort of stuff. And then clearly the conventional wisdom was not working for me and, you know, the things that were going on in my life. So it was this continual dilemma of, you know, what am I doing wrong? Because clearly the conventional wisdom and Australian healthcare system is really good, so I could use my universal, my socialised medicine. You know, I did have good access. I did have good coverage. I was an intelligent woman. So when I went to the weight loss surgeons and I consulted with a couple of surgeons, I would go with my literature highlighted and sticky noted to say, well, this paper says this. What do you say, doctor? You know, the evidence clearly says this in this systematic review. What do you say? So I took a scientific approach to the weight loss surgery to find the one with the best bang for my buck, you know, the best outcome, the best results. What were their sorts of recommendations for that? So it was hard. It was hard to be this seemingly intelligent woman behind a big wall of fat that was struggling to do the conventional practice.
And this is why, Jackie, it's so hard for me when I hear people be critical of a diet like keto. Because if somebody's interested enough to care about their health that they want to do something, why would we discourage them? It seems to me that if you're being intellectual about it and you struggle with the things that are supposed to be the right way, isn't it intelligent to want to try other things? But then you have to find the other things, but then you get discouraged by those other things that could be the thing that would help you. And that's what all of us on this call today, and a lot of people listening and watching today, we had to fight the system that's insulting our intelligence, telling us there's only one way and here's the way. And it was the exact opposite way that all of us found, that we actually found health.
Yeah, absolutely. It's mind-boggling how people can be so rigid. And, you know, who was it, Lou, who spoke about shoe size? Was it you, Jimmy, who spoke about shoe size? So, you know, we all have different size feet. We all have different size clothes. We all have different size. We all want different cars. Everything is different. There isn't one thing in the world that everybody agrees on, ever. So why should we all agree on one way of eating and one way of being healthy and one way of losing weight? It just doesn't exist. And what works for one person may not work. For me, keto has worked, but it hasn't worked as well as some other people. Some other people have lost massive amounts of weight doing keto, and I haven't. I've lost a lot, but I haven't lost massive amounts. But does that mean it doesn't work? Well, obviously it does work, because I've reduced 50 odd pounds. So yes, it does work to an extent. So, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for everybody all the time.
Louise?
But what's really interesting for both Jackie and my journey, and now, Jackie and I are, have mixed things up, and we're doing this alternate day fasting. So we're on this, 100-day challenge. But our keto journeys have been very different. Like over the winter, I did a higher protein. Like I sort of reduced my fat, higher protein. Jackie not hated carnivore, but carnivore she struggled with. Not gonna lie, Jackie will tell you. I loved carnivore. I just felt so good on carnivore. It was really this different flavors of low carb keto has been obviously throughout our journey, had different results. So even though, like we say, we've got this low carb keto thing that we do, there's so many different iterations, variations. We've had to mix things up because we've hit plateaus or stalls, or we've not felt the best. I felt better on this, I felt not so good on this. It's a continuously evolving journey that we're on, and particularly after we've finished our 100 days of alternate day fasting, who knows what we're going to go back to. So
And Louise, we're both doing this 100-day. We were going to do this 100-day alternate day fasting from the 26th of April, I think it was, wasn't it? And so this is how different we are. One, Louise starts a week earlier for me, so she started it earlier. She didn't wait for me. Two, we do it differently. So Louise does alternate days. She eats one day, she doesn't eat the next day. She eats one day, doesn't eat the next one. I am doing 3 days a week of not eating. So there is 2 days in the week where I eat consecutively. So even within that, and we're very close, and we talk nearly every day, if not by messenger, we talk, we speak. Even with that, we're still doing it so differently.
But
which is beautiful.
It's really good, because obviously I'm an early adapter. So, okay, you put a challenge, I'll start straight away. But I don't have children. Jackie's, with her husband and with the boys at home. So she wants to, she's got to be mindful of how that fits in with her family dynamic. So here it's just me and Andrew. So we can do this. But to be fair, Jackie, we are going away. So for the weekend. So, it's not going to be as strict.
See, it's not going to be as strict, and then she froze. So I think she's done talking, but she's kind of
yeah.
Not as strict. That's a good way to end. Thank you, Louise. She can't hear us, but I'll keep talking. Fabulouslyketo.com is the website, guys. Go check out their website. I think we lost her, Jackie. Hi, Louise. I wanted to say goodbye, but we're frozen. But Fabulously Keto, the #1 over on Instagram. That was good timing. Oh, she's back. You're back.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah,
but anyway.
you were frozen.
So
We're ending the show now, but thank you. Yes, you were. It was funny. It was good timing because it finished on a thought that was like complete, and I was like, "Oh, that's a perfect way to end," except at the end. So, so go check out their podcast, you guys. Fabulously Keto. Go look up my episode. We had a lot of fun on that show. And fabulouslyketo.com is the website. Any final words of wisdom from either one of you?
I would say if you haven't tried it, just try it, just do it. I know all the doctors are telling you not to, but just go for it and just, give it a go. And if you're already there, then try something different, swap things up. As you've heard, we all do different things, so give it a go.
Louise, before you freeze again?
Vegemite is better than Marmite.
Love it. Love it. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having us. It's
Jimmy.
been fabulous.
Get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
Hey guys, you know I'm all about healthy nutrition, and I have a brand new product I want to tell you about called Athletic Greens. This is not just a multivitamin. It has 75 essential elements that you want to have in your diet, from probiotics to greens to digestive enzymes to prebiotics. There's so many things that they pack into the Athletic Greens. The main reason why I love them is it puts it all in one place. Like literally you'd have to a la carte buy all of these different supplements, and they do it all in one package. So if you go to athleticgreens.com/Jimmy, and you can get a special discount if you go there, and the discount is you get a free 1-year supply of their vitamin D as well as some of their travel packs. Go check it out, you guys. athleticgreens.com/Jimmy.